Welcome to Prose and Cons, a podcast by writers for writers, brought to you by Precipice Fiction. Precipice Fiction would like to acknowledge the people of the Eora and Durag nations as the original custodians and storytellers of the land this podcast was created on.
Hello all you wonderful people out there in podcast listener land. Just a little spoiler warning on this one. We are mentioning a couple of IPs where we will explicitly be doing spoilers for both the book and the movie, in particular The Shining and Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep / Bladerunner. So if you are a little spoiler squeamish, as I put it, you may want to turn off now. Also, we definitely have missed a few adaptations. So if there's anything particularly heinous or fantastic, please feel free to click down in the contact form there and let us know. And we will read it out on the next episode because, we want to hear from you. That's all, and on with the show. Oh, yeah. Well, that's the next line. Yeah. Hello, and welcome to Prose and Cons, the podcast for writers by writers. I am your host, Alex, and with me today we have several other people who I will introduce in a second. But first, the topic we're going to be discussing today is adaptions, text adaptions from one medium to another. Most of them are books to movies, but we do have a few different variations on that too. But before we get into the meat of that, yes, I will have everyone introduce themselves.
Hi there, I'm Paddy Boylan. I'm a creative writing teacher, bid writer, which is a kind of technical writer, editor, and increasingly fiction writer. I'm putting more and more time aside to write fiction, and it feels really good getting back on that.
Hi, my name is Matan and Elul. I write fantasy and horror. In my spare time, I teach English to high schoolers for a living, and I also do some editing work on the side.
Hello, I'm Phoenix Raig. I'm a freelance editor and founder of Bentlight Writing, which is just it's a freelance editing house which has a focus on authenticity reading and all that good stuff. I'm also a agented children's author, so I do a lot with children's literature and fiction, fantasy, all that good stuff.
And my name is Alex Eldridge. I run a guitar school in Sydney. That's my bread and butter. And I'm also a writer. I have recently put out a short story with the fiction edition of The Big Issue, which I'm quite proud of. But usually, other than that, I write horror and commercial and literary fiction. And that's it. So today, the subject we're going to get into is adaptations. And I was thinking about this the other night as I was watching a movie, which I'll get into. And I was going through this movie. The movie is Annihilation. It's based on a book by Jeff Vandermeer. Really, really good movie, really good adaptation. But as I was going through it, I was going, this actually doesn't hit any of the beats of the book. It's vaguely the same. The characters are vaguely the same. Added one, taken one out. But yeah, this is fundamentally very different. But it's still good. It might even be better. And it just made me think, well, what is it that makes a good adaptation? Adaptation. Let's say adaptation. What is it that makes a good adaptation?
Adaption?
Adaptation. An adaptation.
That's a word.
That's definitely syllables.
You definitely said it.
I definitely said it. It was said.
It is a word.
Yeah. So let's go around and talk about what we think it takes to make a good adaptation or adaptation.
Well, when you mentioned Annihilation, I haven't read Annihilation, but it's been on my read list for a long time because I've seen some blogs and people just talking, people whose opinions I really respect, saying if you like weird science fiction and weird fiction, Vandermeer's stuff is such a wonderful example of that. I've read Born, his book, which I thought was crazy and deeply strange, and Annihilation is meant to be even stranger. I saw the movie of Annihilation. I haven't read the book. The movie was weird. It was really weird, and it captures that sense of the uncanny. And did I love the movie? I don't know. I thought it was cool, but I thought it was a bit messy. Alex, you've seen both. Do you think, even though it didn't follow the narrative exactly, that it captured the spirit of the book? Because Vandermeer's work definitely has a certain vibe.
Absolutely. Okay. I think that's why I liked it, because it was clearly the work of someone who'd gone, okay, cool, I really like this IP, but I want to make it more effective for visual medium. And it's got all these really cool things like it effects in terms of this. They're in this place called the Shimmer. And there's literally this shimmering the whole time, like this sort of weird oil, that oil slick kind of rainbow effect.
Yeah,
it's got that all over it. And
not that I've taken acid, but it's like that sheen that I hear people see when they take acid, and everything takes on a certain sparkle.
Allegedly.
Exactly. But I feel like it hews very closely to that spirit, if not the actual events. And I think it's kind of better for it, because if you tried to do a direct representation of that particular book, I feel like it might be a little hammy or a bit shoehorned in.
When we say good adaptation, it might depend on what we mean. Like, I'm going to look at Bladerunner a little later. The film has very little to do with the book, but it's a wonderful movie. So is that a good adaptation? I don't know. Probably not, but maybe. Something could be a very faithful adaptation and really accurate. And in that sense, someone who loves the book might love it. Someone who hasn't read the book might think, I don't know about this. Maybe the best middle ground is something that captures the spirit really well, but then changes it as needed to make it a good film. Because the medium has its own necessities.
I feel I'm gonna say something kind of pretentious sounding, but I think it requires.
We're all about that.
You're in a writer's group, man. We're here for it.
But it requires. I feel like it needs, like, the director needs to have fluency in the story, in the sense that it's like, if you're giving like a speech, I feel like speeches work way better if you don't read note for note, but rather read the speech, understand what it's trying to say, and then simply talk. Like, look out at the audience and give those points that come back up. So I feel like it takes the director reading the book and finding genuine inspiration in it. Like, I love this premise. I love the concept. I want to make things with this same formula. Like, I want to take my run at it, and they find that inspiration in it and they see it happening in their own way. And I think that's where you get really cool adaptations that really don't hit it beat for beat, but they don't need to, because they captured from that other angle. But it's like, it would almost be like the director going to the author and be like, what do you think of this? And then it'd be like, I would want the author to equally feel like, ooh, yeah, that's cool. Run with that. They don't necessarily obviously have to have that conversation, but it's that feeling of they're both making the same story.
I'm really glad we're talking about adaptations, because I think in today's world of IP obsession, it's such an important topic, because in many ways, the strongest aspect of an adaptation is also the Achilles heel of an adaptation, and that's the expectations. A lot of the time you have an existing audience. Now, that means it's easier to get butts in seats in the cinema, but it also means that you have tougher critics out there. And sometimes that means that you could not do certain changes that are reasonable to make because of the format, because the crowd is going to be upset. The audience, the loyal fans are going to be upset about your changes. A classic example of that is in the third Lord of the Rings, the Army of the Dead. Has everyone here watched Lord of the Rings?
Yes.
The Return of the King?
Yeah.
So the Army of the Dead is classic because Peter Jackson has infamously really hated them. He really thought it's silly in his grim, realistic war scenes to just have an army of ghosts come in. And he was really pushing back against it. But eventually enough producers kind of convinced him, apparently, like, man, you can't just take out the Army of the Dead. The fans are going to slay you.
It's a big piece.
So, yeah, that's just one part of it. So, in a way, I think that you kind of need to have this perfect storm for a good adaptation. I think what Paddy said is really true. You don't have to do it word for word, but you do have to love and understand the source material, so that the choices and decisions you make about the changes come from a place of respect for the source material and knowing what could be best for that format.
It's a great analogy too. I'd like to point that out. The idea of having a speech and learning it so well that you don't need to read it. I think that's a really, really strong analogy for it.
So you probably all heard that Tolkien's, I don't know if it's grandson or son, but his estate, whoever holds his estate, was really unhappy with Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings films.
Oh, really?
I haven't seen them. And he said that Tolkien would have hated this. He would have like,
really?
you are, I don't want to say, how can I re-put this? You're ruining his work and his legacy.
That's surprising. Phoenix, you read it recently again.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I did not read it recently again, but
No, The Hobbit.
What's
no, none of it. But
sorry.
No, it's fine. But what I will say is I don't think I would have read The Lord of the Rings had I not first seen the movie. I don't think I would have really known about it as much. And I feel like that's something. One thing I'd really quickly like to throw out, though, and this is like a little bit off topic, but it just blows my mind. A while ago, I was watching Harry Potter, and like the Warner Brothers logo comes up and you hear that classic like Harry Potter theme. The fact that theme did not exist when the book was first written is wild, because that song is so just like so heavily associated with the Harry Potter world. It's now. It's wild to think that someone took the books and made that whole cloth. Like, all right, we got these themes, we got this stuff. And then they make that song that's now a staple of Harry Potter. That doesn't you don't hear that when you read the books, even though you do kind of now.
That's good composition.
It's amazing composition.
To follow that line of thought very vaguely, do we think it's possible for an adaptation to surpass the source material? I mean, is it I certainly have an opinion on this, but is it if we are looking at something in the spirit of the original thing and going like, okay, well, what's this about? What are the building blocks here? What can we do with it? Is it possible for a film or a video game or even a novelization, theoretically, to take that spirit and readapt it and remake it and make it to even a superior level? And I can only really think of one, maybe two, but I do think it can be done. What do you reckon?
I don't see why it couldn't. It seems perfectly plausible. I just can't think of any examples. And I'm sure I've seen something. I might not even know that it's an adaptation, but why not?
You wouldn't say Blade Runner?
No, I wouldn't. No, this seems like a good time to talk about Blade Runner.
Yes.
Would it be too much of a tangent? Okay.
No, I think it's good. I think it's good.
I don't see why not, even though I can't think of an example. But my question, like, if the source material isn't great, I don't know why you would adapt it, unless maybe you can see nuggets of greatness in there, or you read it and like, there's things in here, but I see what they could have done differently. I think the original book of Blade Runner is great. Alex, I know you don't like it. I think you think
I didn't say
pretentious and navel-gazing.
I do like it. I do like it. I just don't think it's quite as good. Sorry, I'll let you continue.
That's okay. No, and fair. It's just very different. Blade Runner is a completely different film to Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? It's got some similar themes as a guy hunting androids, but really, that's about it. That's fine. And the movie is its own thing, and the movie is great. I think the book is its own thing. The book is great. I think it's hard to compare the two. Incidentally, Blade Runner the movie got its name because the Hollywood studio had this script for Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep kicking around for so long that the script kept mutating and producers made changes here and changes there. This is my understanding. If I've got this wrong, listeners, please let us know. But by the time they're like, yeah, let's pick this thing up, it had so many like lines slashed through it and margin notes that it wasn't even the same book. And because then they're like, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? That doesn't make any sense. That we can't sell that name.
Yeah.
Why don't we just call it? And the producers look around their studio. There's another science fiction film script lying around.
Johnny Lamp.
No, called The Blade Runner. And they're like, beautiful. Let's use that.
That's so good.
Blade Runner has nothing to do with that movie.
Imagine being the guy who wrote that movie, that film.
There are no blades.
Yeah, there's no blades and very little running.
And only like not even that much running. Like they run, but there's not much.
Not a lot of blades, honestly. I don't recall seeing any blades in it.
I don't remember what my point was, so Alex, please move on to someone else.
I do want to discuss this a little bit. I think Blade Runner is and being a big fan of Philip K. Dick's work, I don't think Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is a bad book by any stretch of the imagination. There are parts of it that I would excise. There's a specific part where
the mystical
there's a guy
stuff.
who's hooked up to a machine and he's doing basically this like spiritual quest where he's like climbing up this mountain, and it's not terrible. I just think it drags a little bit. I think that improves it through concision, but more importantly, the end of the movie, the android gives itself up as opposed to being, hunted down. And I thought that was much more in the spirit of what should have happened. I felt much more satisfied by that denouement than I did from reading the original book, and that's why I think it's the superior adaptation. But I can't really think of anything else.
Yeah, I've had people tell me that they prefer the movie Stardust to the book Stardust. There are a few scenes in the movie that, well, I had one friend say that there was just a scene that felt really fun and playful, and the book felt kind of lacking without it. And then Lord of the Rings, I will say there were some decisions the movie made that I heavily agreed to while reading the book. Like specifically all the stuff with Tom Bombadil, it was just like thematically completely adjacent. And it was like, right. I don't even know what you're doing with this stuff. This is like, it exists in a little bubble. You can literally remove all the Tom Bombadil stuff and completely understand the story without skipping a beat. And that's what the movies did.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, all right, you know what? Fair, it works. But I will also say that it's a weird kind of like chicken before the egg thing, because who knows, like I saw the movies first, so that kind of became my official canon. So I'm more likely when reading the books to relate to the scenes that feel more like my canon. So when I'm bumping up against things that weren't in the movie, it has a kind of queer element to it. Kind of implicitly. That being said, there are other like obviously character insights and things like that I did very much so jive with, but there were scenes that weren't in the movies that kind of felt alien to me. And there is kind of that meta aspect to it that I kind of wanted to put out there as well.
Before I say which adaptation I think has slightly surpassed the source material, I just want to say that one of the things that a lot of adaptations have to deal with is the B plot. In books, you don't necessarily need a B plot, but in a movie, if you convince the actors to sign up, you got to give them screen time, especially if you adapted your book into a TV show.
Can you give us a definition of what a B plot is?
A B plot is, so we got the A plot, which is the main objective, usually with the main protagonist, and the B plot is usually what happens when we turn the camera away to see, oh, what's happening meanwhile in the other side of the town. Even in a sitcom, you have the main issue, and then you got the side issue in an episode of Seinfeld. Maybe the main one is Jerry's trying to get a job, and the B plot is George trying to get a girlfriend or something like that. But it would kind of happen at the same time, less screen time for the B plot. That is definitely something that adaptations have to deal with, and usually they have to conjure their very own B plot because it didn't exist, and they want to flesh out time for the characters. With that being said, the choice of adaptation I really like is kind of cheating because it's a 3-way adaptation, and that's the Witcher series.
Oh,
it's the books turned into the games, turned into the series, which is a series which is heavily influenced by the games, and follows closely the books, but definitely lives in the shadow of the uber popular games. You cannot ignore them. And I like the books. I do think the game is a better experience from a storytelling standpoint.
Interesting.
And I do think that the TV show, by being forced to create the B plot, has actually outdone some of the stories, especially the first season, which is an anthology of stories about Geralt. I liked what they did. It was a bit controversial, but I think they did very well.
That's interesting. You know, when you say that movies are more likely to have a B plot, unthinkingly, I would have thought it's the other way around, because in a book is often like a medium that is allowed to meander more. You know, you don't have to have things happening all the time. You can have side tangents because a reader, it's a more meditative experience. But yeah, now that I think about it, there's so many movies that have like a romance plot stuck in, or, you know, a thing with the character's father. So that's I guess that's the B plot coming through. Very interesting.
Yeah, think of like the Phantom Menace, where they've got like the 3 things going on at the same time. And I remember seeing it as a kid and just being like, there's a lot of stories, like a lot of things going on. I don't necessarily dislike it, because the thing with the Gungans is cool, and like I love the Naboo fighter scene, and the obviously the lightsaber thing is very cool. But even then I was like, this is a lot. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah, I remember a lot of the Star Wars movies have that at the end. There's a big culmination, and usually a lot of them do end with a splice between 3 or 4 scenes. I remember counting as a kid, like I remember just kind of following along and just being like, oh yeah, cool. And then kind of after the fact, it's like, that was 4 simultaneous moments that were being shown to me.
Oh yeah,
wild.
Let's go on. Let's do our fun little like best and worst adaptation.
Oh boy.
So I'm gonna
Take out the slime.
let's first go through. I think we've talked about the best a little bit. So you can give me, let's start with the worst. What's the worst adaptation you've ever seen, and why was it the worst? Paddy, you were champing at the bit, I beg your pardon. What do you reckon?
I, Robot.
Oh, why, Paddy? Why?
Matan, have you read the book?
No, but I love some Will Smith.
Will Smith's performance was perfectly serviceable. It was a good performance. Will Smith is a good actor.
Yeah.
They took. No, please. I want to hear what you have to say.
No, go ahead.
No,
just your eyes betray your real emotions. That's what I'm saying. If the listeners are not watching the video, he's giving compliments to Will Smith, but his gaze is delivering very different emotions.
Well, I'm feeling glittering rage. Glittering rage is how I describe it. Will Smith is not the problem. The problem is they've taken one of the smartest, most interesting books. It's so rich with clever ideas and futurism and predictions and real deep thought. Have you guys heard of the 3 laws of robotics? I mean, futurists and roboticists actually consider Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics from iRobot when they're seriously designing future systems and AI. Brilliant.
Can you tell us what those laws are?
Yes, please tell us what the rules are.
Asimov, okay, I'll try. And Asimov had an idea that, like, if we're going to have like sentient robots that are actually interacting with society, they need to be guided by rules in order to not do terrible things under,
fair.
like while thinking they're doing right. But we need to make them as simple as possible, because if we make them super nuanced, it allows lots and lots of room for like technicalities.
Yeah.
So there's just 3 simple rules, and it's something like a robot cannot harm people. It cannot harm itself unless by doing so it would allow someone else to come to harm. I'm sorry, I don't remember the third one. I should have looked this up before.
Yeah, I know. I think it's they can't harm people is the big one. Then they can't let people come to harm.
Yes,
and then
they can't stand by and let someone come to harm. Yeah,
and they can't harm themselves unless it would mean that they won't be able to save someone. I believe that's the 3. It's something like that. It's basically like don't hurt people.
The third one is interesting.
Yeah, well, it sounds simplistic. You might be like, why? But the whole book is a meditation on why these laws are important. I mean, it's more than that. So he gets into all these case studies of like, this is what happens when a robot doesn't have this law or does have this law. Really cool stuff. And the movie is just dumb. It's just a big action film, and they stripped out all of everything that made that original stories, because it's kind of an anthology, great. So it left me, like, when I came out, it left me thinking, why did you do iRobot at all? Now so many people and so many young people's first experience of Asimov is big dumb action movie. It wasn't even the worst movie in the world. It was fine as far as big dumb action movies go. But why do Asimov? Why take this incredibly intelligent idea and dumb it down? They should have made their own IP. Because at that point, the movie was so far away that if they hadn't called it iRobot, but it was exactly the same film, I wouldn't have known it was based on iRobot. But it's not like Will Smith fights killer robots in the future.
And the robots look silly too. They're like these big white blue things, and they're just like, they look like
the CGI of the 2000s.
Oh, the CGI now, man, I still struggle. Like, you'd still see. Anyway, it's beside the point. That's a great example, Paddy. Thank you.
Yeah, can I say mine before Phoenix steals it? Because I think Phoenix is gonna steal mine. I'm sorry. I have a feeling.
No, it's fine.
It's Dragon Ball Evolution, hands down.
I've heard that was terrible.
You thought I was gonna steal that one?
I mean, you're in the anime lane. I thought like maybe he'll bring it up.
Why is it
not even on my radar?
Why is it bad?
Yeah.
Why is vomiting on yourself bad? Is it even bad? What do you mean? Have you watched it?
No, I haven't.
Thank God.
That's a soundbite.
Wow. Listeners, if you haven't watched Dragon Ball Evolution, first of all, bless you and your life decisions. But some of us, closer to our 30s, have had the pleasure. Lucky Gen Zs. But no, it's awful. It completely twists what Dragon Ball is about. Goku is an angsty emo teenager. He doesn't have any of the things that make Goku lovable. And it's just let's get an IP. People will come to watch it. Action. Doesn't matter if we understand the source material, that kind of stuff.
It's almost like, I mean, it sounds like the same sort of thing as iRobot. They're just cashing in on the name. It's like, this is a big name that people know, and we're just going to cynically cash in on that while making all our gross producer changes to appeal to our marketing research.
And that's why you need the director to have like, and the producers to have like genuine inspiration and like really want to create something with it, because otherwise it is like they will just capitalize on the fact that, oh, this exists as a book and has a following. It makes more sense for us to make a movie with under that IP than spin one up whole cloth that nobody recognizes, because why not go in with a built-in audience that makes sense financially?
Yeah, it's just marketing.
Yeah.
What do you reckon, Phoenix? What's your like stinker?
This was my kind of introduction to movie adaptations of books, and it was kind of cool because I kind of got to see both ways it could go, and that's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And it was the first time I didn't read much as a kid, so this was the first time I read a book and then went to see the movie. And I loved the movie, but I was a little confused because it was like they didn't do a lot of things that happened in the book. Like reading a book as a kid and then going to see the movie, I expected to be like, oh yeah, it's going to be the book, but as a movie. And that's my first time seeing that sort of thing where they did make creative decisions that changed it a bit, but for the better. I loved it. But then a little bit later, there was apparently like another movie adaptation of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but it was an animated movie. And I don't know when it came out, but it was significantly older. And they did pretty much do it shot for shot as the book. They even had like reaction shots that kind of emulated the sort of descriptions of the character reactions in the book. Like they were very literal. And it's kind of like, it was satisfying as a kid because I was like, okay, there are the scenes that I remember. But at the same time, it was kind of like, I see why this is not necessarily the best way to go. Like this is kind of awkward, a little bit weird.
Have you seen or heard of the I think it was a BBC series that they did, like a long form BBC TV series of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? Yeah. As far as I know, it's really faithful. Yeah, and I saw it as a kid. I never read Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but it's great and very, very detailed. I'm gonna say I recommend it to anyone that likes Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, because it was pretty cool.
Yeah,
nice. And I'm gonna say it's not really fair to frame this as the worst adaptation, because objectively speaking, it's not a bad movie. Like it's a very good and very highly regarded movie. I just
doesn't make it a good adaptation.
Yeah, I'm gonna say The Shining. What's his name? Where's my
Stephen King, Alex? I believe you're looking for Stephen King.
Oh, thank you, Phoenix. I was actually trying to think of the director.
Stephen King's good side by jumping on that movie.
I think that's 3 Stephen King.
Admit it,
right there. Who was the guy who made it? He did Full Metal.
Kubrick.
Thank you. Yes,
yeah.
So really famous Kubrick film. I'm not even going to say it's bad. I don't think it's bad. I think it's a good movie. I just don't like it because I feel like it. You know that thing we were talking about where, like, sticking to the spirit of the source material?
Yeah.
I think it really doesn't do that. Okay, and I'll explain why.
That's fair.
So, fundamentally, The Shining, the book, as I understand it, is about a man who is kind of on the edge of sanity, but fundamentally a good person, who is basically driven into this situation where he goes essentially mad from like lack of alcohol, really. Like it's almost like delirium tremens or something. And he then goes and tries to kill his family, right? That's what it's about. It's about a good man who is backed into the corner, and it's kind of that joke, like what's that the killing joke, like, oh, one bad day. So it's sort of that idea, but a little less hacky, I think. But the interpretation Kubrick takes is like, well, this guy's kind of a bit of a dick, like, and he's really just waiting for an excuse to cut loose. And also, I mean, I feel like the woman who plays his wife, her performance is a little shaky as well. There are some really cool things about it, but yeah, like essentially the ending of it is that Jack Torrance, the main, I guess, main protagonist and antagonist, sort of winds up frozen to death in the courtyard while the other people go away. And it's like, if you've read the book and never seen the movie, that is like, it kind of chops off about this at the second third of the movie, and it's really like the second third of the book, and it's really like, really, and it doesn't it doesn't look into the malevolence of the actual hotel, which I think is the real antagonist. And it just took a lot of the ideas about it and really took it in a direction that I didn't like. So while I don't think it's a bad movie, there are some really cool scenes, like the stairway, the elevator full of blood is not in the book. I think that's a really, really cool idea. The creepy twins, maybe not so much. But yeah, there are some very cool ideas in it, but it just comes from a place of like, no, I don't like what you did there. I'm going to do this thing here. And that rubs me the wrong way.
It's such a Stanley Kubrick thing to do, to be like, no, I'm going to do my own thing. Like, no, I don't care. I'm going to do my own thing. Like he was famous for that. He would never do what producers, etc., told him. I've never read the book of The Shining, and I'd like to. I'd like to read all.
It's a good book.
Stuff. Really good. That's what people say. But I've seen the film multiple times, and I think it's a brilliant film. Like brilliant, 90-something out of 100. I love Kubrick. It's a style. But I mean, if I wonder to what extent, if Kubrick had stuck to the original work, he would have been sort of hobbled from his creative vision. Obviously, he had a very specific vision in mind. And he took the road of like, I'm going to make this less an adaptation, more my own thing, using the book as a starting point.
It's almost like this. I don't want to say like an FU to anyone who knows the book, but like there are things that happen in it that are almost okay. So, for example, one thing that really sticks out at me is the janitor who comes back. I forget his name, but basically he goes away and he has this mind.
You're talking about the chef, I think, the nice guy, right?
The chef. He's a caretaker. No, you're right. You're right. He is a chef. Yeah, that's absolutely right. So he has this mind connection with Danny. And he hears Danny calling to him, and he comes back. And in the book, he actually survives, and there's this really nice epilogue where he's like living with, he's kind of rehabilitating the son and the mother as well. And it's actually really heartfelt, and I really like it a lot. It's one of King's better endings. And in the movie, if anyone's seen the Simpsons episode, he comes up and he's like, I'm here, Dad. And Jack just turns around and like Full Sail shoots him, like just takes him out. And it's just like, well, what was the point of him even being in it? So it's almost like, I thought he was going to be the savior. And you could call it like a bathotic moment or something, and that's fine. But it just felt a bit like, see what I did there? And I'm just like, I
wonder how much of that is because you've read the book. Like, I wonder if you hadn't read the book, And
that's a good question. That's a good question.
I really want to...
But it feels like it flies in the face of it rather than just necessarily doing something different, which is kind of my point. Sorry, Matan.
I really want to touch on 2 points that Alex made. And I think that, Alex, I walked into this ready to defend the movie, but you made some really convincing 2 arguments, but they're very separate. So the thing about the ending, him freezing instead of what happens in the book, which is vastly different from that, and honestly a lot more exciting, that feels like a budgetary production could kind of explain that, runtime. We don't have time for a third act when all of this is happening with the boys. I can live with that. But what you said about the first bit, no, that's the soul of the movie. Because Jack in the book is not a despicable piece of crap. He's troubled. He's deeply troubled. But Jack Nicholson does an amazing performance. He's terrifying. But at no point in the movie you feel like he's a good guy. Not even at the start. You don't like him. Not even, you're just waiting for him to snap, and you kind of blame him, not the hotel, right?
Yeah,
but totally. In the book,
it's a different villain.
Yeah, in the book, it's really clear this is not Jack. Whatever this thing is, Jack was the first victim. That's it. And that's something the film fails to convey, I think.
Does it fail to convey, or does it choose not to convey it?
Interesting.
I think you're right, Paddy. I think it intentionally not even obfuscates it, just goes a different route. And that's why I want to say that I don't think it's a bad film. At no point do I think I'm like, this sucks. Okay, the ending I do kind of hate. I like the freeze, like that just annoys me. But I think it is actually an excellent film, but it almost feels like, I'm just repeating myself now, but it almost feels like it's like, here's the source material, I'm going to rip it up in front of you. That's what it feels like to me. And that's fine. That is a perfectly legitimate choice. And I think it makes for a good movie. I just don't like it.
We've talked about how Stephen King hates it, right? Because we should mention that Stephen King hated it.
He really is not. And he's actually a big fan of even some of his clunkers, but he really did not like that. And I think it's for the reason that I brought up, that it is so spiritually different to the source material that we've got there, that it is, I think it really irked him, you know, and I can see how it would do so.
And then Stephen King directed a version himself of it, which I think was a made-for-TV version because he wanted to be faithful. And it sucked.
Yeah,
don't bother. It's really bad.
No way.
Yeah. Incidentally, if you do want to see a Stephen King directed movie that is actually, people hate it, but I actually really like it. Oh my God, what's it called? Oh, it's one from the 80s. It's actually
one with the killer trucks,
cinematography in it. Yeah, with the trucks.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, this is going to be.
I know the one you're talking about.
Maximum Overdrive.
Oh, yeah.
If you haven't seen Maximum Overdrive and you like 80s creature features, you have to see this movie.
Grab a couple beers, make a night out of it.
Get the boys around, have some beers. It's a lot of fun. It's not a good movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a lot of fun.
Is it like Sharknado bad, or like?
I haven't seen Sharknado. There's like, I think it actually, we're really going on a tangent here, but actually we're not. We're not, because this is an adaptation of a book he wrote.
Based on a book? What?
No. Maximum Overdrive is based on a book he wrote, so I am totally justified in going down this rabbit hole. So no, it was based on a book he wrote, and if you watch it, there's actually some really striking cinematographic details. There's this one image that always sticks with me, that like this kind of gun that's like framed against the sun, and as they're doing this montage sort of. Anyway, there's some quite striking images in it, but as a movie in general, it's a bit shit. I just keep trying to find the book somewhere to read it, to see just how terrible it is, because it was written in a cocaine-induced nightmare zone. So yeah, watch Maximum Overdrive if you can, and that'll be about the 16th Stephen King reference we'll have in this episode.
I just want to say this has nothing to do with anything at all, but I was just reminded that a movie named Birdemic exists, and I just love that title so much. Terrible, like they made it on like $1 probably. It's ridiculous. Yeah, but that there is a combination of bird and epidemic. So
thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Phoenix.
Birdemic. I don't remember.
It's a portmanteau.
But every now and then I remember that it exists, and I have a great time.
Wait, Phoenix. The official name is Birdemic Shock and Terror.
Has anyone seen The Birds by Alfred Hitchcock? Because I've read the short story by Ralph Daphne du Maurier, and that's really good. And I've heard The Birds is very good as well. Has anyone seen it?
No, not all of it.
Mm-mm. Is that's the like very classic film with the woman hiding in a phone booth?
Yes. Yeah. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's the one. I need the biggest birdseed you have.
I'm uncomfortable.
No, that's too big. Paddy knows what I'm talking about.
I actually don't, but I'm smiling.
There's a Simpsons episode where Hans Moleman is in the telephone booth, and he's like, I need the biggest bell of birdseed you have. And then he pauses for a bit, and then he's like, no, that's too big.
What is happening?
It's classics.
Podcast going off the rails.
We need to rerail.
Okay.
We need to derail.
I'm sorry.
Well, we're talking about people doing adaptations where the spirit is kind of missed. And like Paddy, what you were talking about with iRobot, that actually happened. One very kind of old example of this is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Apparently I just finished reading the original version, and later movies, as well as I think there was a stage play that came a little bit later that initially kind of bastardized it, but I might be remembering it wrong. But really, like, people read it, and the thing they took away from it was not this sort of like some forsaken being coming into existence that's really like struggling with finding their place in the world. The thing they took away was like, whoa, someone made a monster out of dead people parts. That's wild. Right. And like they wanted the action monster movie, and so like later adaptations of it leaned into that. And Mary Shelley actually went and wrote a later edition of the book that was leaning more into that, like just sort of
Really?
Frankenstein's monster as a monster and that sort of thing.
Wow.
But now when you seek out the original, you will find the original because people kind of preserved that version that was more artistic and explored some kind of heavy topics and things like that.
I'm surprised that
Really
she did that. It feels like it's the sort of thing that an author just would never do.
Yeah. I'm curious to know why, but
So much less interesting,
Mhm.
Is that like the Boris Karloff version you took, like the classic Frankenstein? Is that the movie version you're talking about?
Oh no, I don't know. I'll have to.
I didn't know there is a classic Frankenstein movie, like
Oh yeah,
an
there
iconic.
definitely is. Yeah, like in the 60s, I think, like early 60s. I've never seen it.
Yeah, but the version of the book I had a whole like afterword where some historian was explaining it or something like that. And
That's very cool.
It'd be cool to read that original, that secondary version, and be like seeing her just like
Alex, maybe you'll know because I know you read it. Is Dracula loyal to the source material, like the OG Dracula?
Which
The-
adaptation?
Yeah.
Is there any that is super loyal to the adaptation?
Yeah. I mean, yes, most of them are. Like it's kind of really this story in two parts. It's like the beginning bit, which is Jonathan Harker's diaries and stuff, and then this secondary sort of section, which I don't like as much. It's still very
London.
Good. In London, where they're like hunting him down. It's very detective-y almost. But yeah, most of them hew pretty close to it. You said that word so many times today. But
they
defeat
defeat Dracula with by eating a nutritious breakfast. The number of times they talk about the importance of starting your day off right and like getting a good meal in you. Yep, they talk.
Yeah,
Look at these British people defeating vampires by getting
I find it lovely.
English
I think
on
it's
them.
beautiful.
It's very nice.
I think it's beautiful. Some British muffins, fix.
Yeah,
fix
everyone loves a British muffin.
Well, I got a quick question which I'd like to ask you guys. Like,
Please.
you've all seen The Hobbit, right? The films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Have you all read the book?
Yes.
Yes.
I actually
Yeah.
haven't seen the last film because the second last film was piss. And I was like,
The third last film
That's my
still is the same piss, just left over
Oh,
time.
same
Well,
flavor of piss.
I've
I
been
don't
talking
know.
about
I'm
this
just-
for a while.
I'm not a fan of any of them, really.
I've never read the book. I've never read any of Tolkien's stuff, so I'm not particularly like. Obviously, I know he's great, but I don't feel any attachment to it. And I kind of like the films. Like, I think I might be the only
Well,
person.
that's
in
okay.
this
Yeah.
If I
hemisphere.
wiped your
There are good
memory,
parts.
if I wiped your memory of any memory, sorry if there's anyone vegetarian or vegan listening.
I'm
If I
vegetarian.
wiped your memory of steaks and beef and
I
chicken,
don't know. I'm
and
vegetarian.
then I gave you tofu, you'd say, "Oh, that's great. There's nothing
I'm
on
deeply
it."
offended. I'm outraged that you would say this about my people. I'm not. I don't. But like, if you guys hadn't read the book, I mean, you can't imagine it because you haven't read the book. Do you think you might think like, oh, yeah, that was a fun run?
Let's compare it
Nah.
to the Lord of the Rings, then,
No.
shall we? To the other movies. That's the problem.
Well, it's just different.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what,
I saw
Paddy,
it
It is Peter
before.
Jackson. It is Peter Jackson.
Yeah,
Same guy,
yeah.
same
And he
director.
made it almost under duress. Well, not under duress, but he was like, I don't really want to do this. And they're like, come on, all the
okay.
money,
Ah.
But I'll tell you what, no, like having said that The Hobbit is one of my favorite books, and it is, I still can pretty confidently say, no, that those movies that I saw, the two that I saw, didn't like them. I barely remember anything about the first one. The second one, what I can remember, I hate. And I think it's a pretty good gauge of like, hey, is this good as a movie? Is this good as a piece of entertainment? And I can pretty safely say like, nah, bruh.
Also made me feel fortunate that the original Lord of the Rings movies came out good, because it just makes you feel like, look, it's literally the same director, same studio, same actors for even some of them, and you need a perfect storm, really.
In the case of The Hobbit, though, there is a lot of things that they made some decisions that I felt were pretty forced. Like I've watched some stuff on it, but also like one of the main things is that the Lord of the Rings, the source material is huge. You kind of need a trilogy to do it. For the Hobbit movies, they kind of forced a trilogy to make it mirror the Lord of the Rings more, or that's what I think anyway. But anyway, the source material is like a 200-page book, and they needed to fill a trilogy with it. So naturally, they come up with a bunch of side plots, a lot of filler, all these things. And there's actually a whole...
They get the Silmarillion in there a little bit, don't they?
I don't know. I wanted to ask Phoenix, do you think it was a wise decision to split the last Harry Potter movie into two?
Yeah. And recently they did that with
Hunger Games also did that with the last
oh
one.
yeah, that one was actually
Twilight.
It
was a trendy thing back then.
Yeah, it was. Harry Potter, I thought did it well. Hunger Games, the last two movies, I didn't like at all. I feel like it really was me discovering that what I liked about the Hunger Games, ironically, was what they were trying to stop, which was the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
So I didn't like the last
totally.
two movies. But
the first one's like a perfect book.
But with the Harry Potter movie, it does feel like the case of like there was a lot in there and they wanted to do it justice. Whereas on the flip side, you have like the second book, which like the movie zips through a bunch of stuff because they have to get through so much so quickly and they still don't cover everything. So it's like, we're going to really do it. It felt like they gave it space to do it justice. And I felt like they did with the last two movies.
Because that's just maybe the last point I really wanted to get through is that I think we're actually possibly in the golden age for adaptations because some conditions have changed. And that is the amount of effort, money, and trust that goes into TV shows with big budget nowadays. Which, like in the 90s, even the early 2000s, a show like Game of Thrones couldn't have been made. I don't believe so. That kind of budget, that kind of investment. Even Harry Potter, which was probably the safest IP since Pokemon, couldn't have gotten the series with that level of investment in it the way that it could today and is getting today. So I think that because of the episodic nature of a lot of books, you got chapters, movies are actually not the natural best fit to adapt a book. It's actually a TV show, but TV shows just didn't have the heavy guns necessary to do it faithfully.
Yeah, that feels true.
I actually think the perfect medium for a movie is a novella. If you're gonna, if you're gonna transition something like Apocalypse Now, which I didn't get really a chance to talk about, is effectively just Heart of Darkness.
Yeah,
which is a short book. It is technically a novella. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff added in there. Paddy,
it's such a wonderful example of being an adaptation, keeping the tone and the feeling, but doing something really interesting with the actual script. Because if those who haven't seen, was it Arthur Conan Doyle who wrote?
No, it's Joseph Conrad.
That's Joseph Conrad, of course. Yeah, my bad. Joseph Conrad wrote a story about going down the Congo River, I believe, into deeper Africa. And Apocalypse Now is about the Vietnam War. The characters are on a riverboat going down. The beats and the themes are all Heart of Darkness. It's about the depravity of man. It's about, the darkness of colonialism, what lurks behind the veneer of civilization. Yeah, the themes are really well maintained, but they tell a different story and they give it a different name because they're like, well, we don't want to disappoint the people that are expecting
which is really cool. Like basically doing an adaptation.
If only iRobot
something different.
It's
almost the exact opposite of iRobot. It's like, we're gonna be faithful to the essence of this, but we're just gonna make it its own thing.
And they give credit to the author, like they recognize it as a adaptation of that.
Well, everyone does recognize it. I don't know if they give credit, but
I think it says at the end credits, like based on a story by.
Okay,
it's like The Lion King is based on Hamlet, but it's not an adaptation.
It feels. If you know both texts, you would be able to say, okay, this is an adaptation of that. I think,
or plagiarism.
It doesn't feel like plagiarism. It feels I don't think it does. It feels like an interesting retelling.
One little thing that I think is really cool that I wanted to say about The Hobbit is there's like a subculture of movie lovers that do, I think they're called cardinal cuts of movies. And they basically just take movies, the film commercial material, and they say, this is how I would have cut it. And somebody did that with the 3 Hobbit movies, and it's basically like, let's just take out all the filler, all the plots, and let's stitch it into one movie. There you have your good movie. Like, because like stuff with Smaug,
is it good?
It's pretty good. Like, there's obviously some jarring parts because some of the transitions are not the smoothest because you're working with commercial material that was not cut that way.
Sure.
But because you have like the Smaug scene, which is really true to the book, as well as
it's good scene.
As well as the Gollum scene. Exactly. Those are it's like those are great scenes because they're true to the book, and that's that's what they had to work with. If they made it one movie, I think it could have been great.
I agree. Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to my friend Jacob, because he took on like a hero's task, and he took all of the Marvel movies, all of them in the Infinity series, and stitched it together in chronological order, scene by scene.
Holy shit.
What?
And it is awesome. It is so awesome. And
we should put a link to that if it's online.
Oh no, it's highly illegal to put online.
Oh dear.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
No. Just we can't put a link.
Put a link to the dark web.
Please don't cancel us.
No, he's trying to find a way to put it online legally, because there are legal ways to do it, just as long as like the right people get the money and stuff like that. Yeah. But it's really he got in.
I think it's legal if he's always on the screen and always reacting.
Yeah.
He can just do expressions. He doesn't have to talk.
Oh, hell, he could just smile and nod,
video.
right?
It's just a picture of him.
Looking smug.
Just a split screen of just like the bottom half.
That's the loophole, guys. Just
God, that's interesting.
That's great.
But Jacob, excellent work. It's really cool. It's very, very cool. And it was an effort of love, and it's beautiful.
Cool. All right. I think we should wrap it there. Paddy, do you want to read the quote for us, please?
Alex, I would love to. This is by Maggie Stiefvater. Please edit this.
I knew it.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's gonna happen.
I know. As soon as I said it, I was like, oh no, he's gonna butcher the name.
Okay. No. Snippety snip. This is a quote by Maggie Stiefvater. It goes like this: I adore book to film adaptations when they're done well, and are more lenient than many readers when it comes to what counts as done well. For me, the most important thing is that the film maintains the spirit of the original book. Yeah, well said. I totally agree with that. The important thing is the spirit.
Yeah. I think that's been the through line of the discussion here. It's like, doesn't really matter what you do as long as you hew to the spirit, or completely neglect the spirit and do your own thing, which is also valid in some instances, I guess. But look, we are Precipice Fiction. I am Alex. This is Matan, Paddy, and Phoenix. Ali and James, who are also part of this collective, were not able to be here today. But we'd ask, if you have enjoyed this episode, we'd love for you to give us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Stitcher, wherever you are. There's probably a little link you can click and give us a little review. That would really help us with visibility. Also, if you're interested in hearing some of our own storytelling, we have a book on Amazon called The New Mythic that you can purchase. We'll just put a link down in the description. So yeah, feel free to do that. It's got 6 great stories in it. I can say at least 5 of those are great because I've only written one of them. But yeah, check that out if you're interested in hearing more from us. But that's going to be it, guys. We'll see you next week, hopefully.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, thank you. See you later.
You're listening to Pros and Cons, the Precipice Fiction podcast.